Hi, everyone. My name is Kelvin Claveria. I'm from the marketing team here at Rival Technologies and Reach3 Insights. Welcome to Outliers. This is an educational live event series that we've created where we invite market research leaders and marketing experts to talk to us about some of the hottest topics in the insights world today. So today, we're talking about deliverables and how we can create deliverables that really capture people's attention and get them to take action. And I invited my colleague Jon Dore here from Reach3 to share his perspectives with us. But before we get started, I just want to give a quick overview of Outliers in case this is the first time that you're joining us. So Outliers, this is really an informal, informative, and an interactive session. So the first 15 minutes or so, I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask Jon during our conversation. And then the last 15 minutes or so are really meant for audience Q&A. So at any point in the conversation, if you have any questions, any thoughts, any feedback, please feel free to use the chat feature here on Zoom and share them with us. And I'll try to make sure I capture all of them as we go along. Now, I know it can be very awkward to use the chat feature on Zoom, especially if you're the first one to do it. So just to get us warmed up, humor me here and maybe let's answer a very quick question in the chat right now. Very curious why you joined us today, and what inspired you to register for this event.
Hey there.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Marianne says PowerPoint is not always the best way to share insights. I think Jon has very strong views on that. You're good. Email. Thank you. Appreciate that, Joe. Okay, meaningful and actionable information beyond PowerPoint is key. Okay, awesome. So thanks for sharing your thoughts there. And as I mentioned, feel free to continue to share your thoughts in the chat. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce everyone to Jon Dore. He is a Senior Vice President and Founding Partner at Reach3. Jon, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kelvin, for having me. Appreciate it.
So to start, I looked at your LinkedIn profile recently, and you mentioned that you are an active international vacationer. So to start, I have a two-part question for you. A, how many countries have you visited so far? And B, how does travel benefit your work as a market researcher?
Yeah, good questions. A bit more active before the pandemic, obviously, but I was able to sneak a trip to Ireland last November, which was nice to get back out of the country for some vacation. Been to 24 countries so far. And, a bit of an obvious answer, but I think, in terms of how travel benefits your work as a market researcher, it's just obviously great to get a view into different lifestyles, cultures, ways of living. As kind of a professional researcher and a little bit of a nerd, I also think it's fun to see some of our clients' brands appear in different countries and take a peek at just the subtle nuances and like, what does a can of Coke look like in Colombia versus the United States? The tins of Pringles are a little bit different in Europe than they are here in the US. So that's always just something that's kind of been cool for me. Yeah, you're on vacation. You're not supposed to be thinking about work, but I can't help myself. And it's really cool to see our clients' brands kind of scattered across the globe and how they adapt the pack, the flavors, the offer for like the in-market, specifics and nuances.
Yeah, I love that example. And for me specifically, I actually like going to different McDonald's.
Yeah, same. Yeah. That's a must stop on every vacation is you got to go to at least one McDonald's in every country.
Right. Cool. Awesome. Now, you're one of the founding partners at Reach3, as I mentioned earlier. Tell us a little bit about your career at Reach3 and how you found yourself helping start this company.
Yeah. I kind of always refer to myself as the fourth founding partner. I'm actually the third employee of Reach3, which is kind of cool. That's just in terms of start dates. But there was four of us that really started this venture together. And I just really admired the other three people who are going in on this, Matt Kleinschmidt, Darius St. Louis, and Lee Admirand. So I consider myself the fourth. I was a little bit of the young gun of the founding partners, but people that were really easy to follow. I sort of maybe went into this a little bit not eyes wide open, and I just kind of assumed if Matt, Dare, and Lee are in, this can't not be successful. So I wanted to follow them. And then I was obviously just a huge believer in the concept of conversational insights and doing research through mobile messaging networks. I think if I think back to my career prior to Reach3, I've always loved insights. I felt like I was born to do insights, but I sometimes felt a little bit of hypocrisy. Just if you think about like sometimes designing, programming, and deploying 20-minute shredded cheese questionnaires. So in a way, like researcher Jon is asking a bunch of people to take a survey that consumer Jon, I would never participate in a 20-minute survey. I just wouldn't. I don't have the time for that. I have other things to do in my free time. So I felt a little bit like at some points, at some phases of my career, like a hypocrite. Like I'm basically asking hundreds or thousands of people to participate in my study when I would never do that in my free time. So when I thought about conversational insights, using Rival Technologies platform to do research, it just made sense to me. And I thought like for the first time in a long time, like this is something I would actually do. So just believing in what I guess I'm designing and bringing to the marketplace was a big deal for me.
Awesome. And now, as you mentioned, Reach3 does a lot of innovative things. You guys are really the pioneers in terms of pushing forward this concept of conversational research principles. But today we're talking specifically about deliverables, which is a huge component of this concept of conversational insights. So to start, let's talk about the many ways that deliverables often fail. What are your thoughts on PowerPoint and other more traditional ways of sharing insights?
Yeah, great question. I think PowerPoint has become the standard. It still is the standard, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the issue with the standard is that there becomes a lot of it. So there becomes this sea of sameness. It's difficult to make your PowerPoint stand out, your slide, your executive summary, be noticeable and differentiated and unique versus everything else. I think the other thing with PowerPoint being the standard is it's too easy to do. We're all very good at using PowerPoint. You can't really get hired in MR if you don't know how to use PowerPoint. You can't build charts. So because it's so easy to do, it's easy to do more slides, more cuts, more appendices, more data. And I think sometimes that works against us as researchers, almost like less is more versus more is more. So just the fact that there's so much of PowerPoint and everyone knows how to use it, I just think we've become overly reliant upon it. And it's tough to differentiate all the data and results and insights that are out there because PowerPoints are flying around in email attachments every day. And it just isn't really standing out in that clutter.
Yeah. And so just curious, so you mentioned PowerPoints are like the standard. Why haven't they gone away? Why is it that our industry really hasn't adopted other ways of sharing insights?
Yeah, well, we're comfortable with them, and so are our stakeholders and our businesses. I think I'm here because I've come at PowerPoint pretty hard in some of my conference presentations. And I do always kind of caveat that with, I still do a lot of PowerPoint myself, right? It is kind of the standard issue deliverable in our industry. But I think, clients need to often patch slides together from different studies, from different vendors. They might want to pull in something from a year or two ago to complement the new fresh data they have. And when all of that is in PowerPoint, it makes that easy to do. So I think that's really why maybe PowerPoint's stuck around a bit longer, and why it really is still the go-to deliverable is it's just we're comfortable with it. It does have utility when you need to reference different pages from different decks. But again, it's just sort of something that we're used to, we're perhaps overly reliant upon. And what I'm loving to get to at this point of the conversation is just how we can maybe think through new ways of delivering insights when the project, the stakeholder, or the moment calls for it, right? Like I want to be very clear, like what we're talking about today isn't giving up on PowerPoint. It's just challenging it in some ways and thinking about, are there complementary reports? Are there situations or certain stakeholder groups where you can replace the PowerPoint with something different? And I think that's the best way to think about moving on from PowerPoint is let's start with complementing or supplementing it. And, I don't know, maybe one day there will be, sorry, Bill Gates, there will be a day where we never do PowerPoint reports. I think that'd be pretty cool if we got there, but totally acknowledge it'll take time. So I think now is just the time to start questioning, is PowerPoint does it always have to be the deliverable?
Yeah. And to your point, PowerPoint may never go away. They may be part of like a suite of deliverables though, right? So it's like, maybe it's part of, depending on what the client needs or what your stakeholders need, like it's one of the standards there, but like you can supplement it with other forms. And at Reach3, one of the ways that you guys do this is through what we call mobile deliverables. These are interactive, engaging web pages that bring to life insights from your studies. They include videos, photos, quotes from participants. So maybe tell us a little bit more about mobile deliverables and how they're different from how insights are usually reported.
Yeah, I think the reason I really like this idea of like a mobile or a digital report, like effectively building out a custom web page for your clients, is that it isn't that different when you get behind, you kind of really drill it down. Like it still is a research report. It's going to communicate key findings. Those findings are going to be backed up with data. After that, we'll show implications or recommendations, right? The so what's based on the data. And we'll also communicate the methodology for the folks who really want to dig in and understand how we came to these conclusions. So it is a research report. It really isn't all that different from PowerPoint from like a core tenant standpoint. But how it is different is it's not PowerPoint, right? It's a digital web page. Because of that, we're able to have it work better on any type of device. Now this thing can be open on a phone. It could be open on a tablet. It could be open on, just a desktop or a laptop in a browser. You could share it a little bit differently, right? It's a link at the end of the day. So think about texting that to colleagues, posting it on a newsletter within your organization, like emailing it if you have to, just like you would email a PowerPoint report. But there's also greater utility in how you share it, as well as how you view it. And then because it is, effectively digital instead of PowerPoint, you have a few more capabilities up your sleeves. Like it plays nicer with photos, video show reels, video selfies from your participants can be loaded in there without having file size issues. So I think the beauty of a mobile top line or a digital top line, if we somehow call it, is it's still a report. We're still giving you the key learnings. We're proving that to be true based on quant and qual data. But we're doing it in like a new format that is different, it's unique, it's dynamic. It brings old school traditional data inputs into it. It allows those new age multimedia inputs to shine a little bit more, those photos, those videos, because it just works better in this channel. I think that's ultimately like some of the best innovation in MR comes from like keeping the good of the traditional and the way we've been doing things, but innovating on the bad. And I think that's sort of the beauty of it is we're not totally reinventing what a research deliverable like should be. We're just bringing it into a new medium, and in that new medium, also flexing our muscle with a couple of new capabilities.
Right. So we'll share an example here in a sec, but yeah, just curious. Walk us through how you make these deliverables. How does your team take all the data, all the insights, and turn them into like these interactive deliverables?
Yeah, great question. I mentioned we still do a ton of PowerPoint, standard issue kind of deliverable expectation from our clients. So in most cases, we start with the PowerPoint. What I'm sort of thinking of the PowerPoint nowadays as is that's the base camp for all results and insights. I want that to be for our closest stakeholders, certainly like the buyer of the study, maybe the other insights professionals in their group. Those folks can handle 30, 40, 60 PowerPoint slides. They can handle the appendix. They probably want to see every question reported. They want to see subgroups of interest. So we'll have that PowerPoint, which is certainly like that comprehensive deliverable. But whether we're talking about a 10-page PowerPoint or a 100-page PowerPoint, like ultimately most studies do boil down to a handful of like real insights, right? And we could have another conversation another day about what is an insight. Like an insight is something that's a little bit more meaningful, a little bit more of an aha, and something you can really utilize to change the way you do something in your business. So, you know, a $15,000 project or a $15 million project, like, you know, oftentimes, regardless of the size of the study, you get 3, 4, 5 nuggets that are like really interesting things that you learned that you didn't know, and you want to go share out with your business, right? That ultimately makes its way into an executive summary in a PowerPoint report. So how I often create these mobile deliverables is when we finally get to that exec sum in a PowerPoint, now let's just take that and find a way to digitize it and bring that to life. Find the key data points that back up the most important learnings, and let's tell that story in a more succinct and kind of new way, as opposed to just being that slide that you tear out of a broader or bigger PowerPoint report. So that's the most common way, Kelvin, is basically start with PowerPoint, get to your exec sum. Now let's really make the exec sum shine in a new deliverable. Other ways we're doing this is just some cases clients are just asking us, like, you know, tell the Gen Z story through that digital deliverable. Give me just this one retailer cut through that deliverable. So the PowerPoint, again, think about it as that base camp. It still is housing all your data, all age cohorts, all retailers, all channels. But if something's really interesting in one of those cohorts, one of those channels, perhaps we just bring that story to life in the form of a digital deliverable. So in that way, it's not just a repeat of the exec sum. It's actually a truly differentiated deliverable that's meant to tell just a portion of the overall story. So those are two of the most common ways. You know, we have some clients who are really embracing this and they only take a digital top line. And then that becomes a similar process to how we would develop a PowerPoint in the first place. What's the key learnings? What data do we need to show to prove that out? And how do we certainly show a mix of the quant inputs as well as the qual inputs? Because again, those qualitative artifacts, the photos, the video, the audio uploads we're able to get in our approaches, they're really powerful. And they just work really well in these new deliverables. So I certainly use that as a way to make those shine.
Yeah. And I just shared an example here that we used for PR purposes last year. So, but yeah, obviously we couldn't share client ones, but this one is something that we used for PR last year. So check it out just so you can kind of get a sense of what Jon is talking about. What's been the feedback from clients? I know, you know, clients like Kellogg's and Hyundai, like they love these. Just curious about specific feedback from your clients. Like, do they think the length is right? Do they like the fact that it has quant and qual? Are they still asking for PowerPoints? Just curious about the overall feedback.
Yeah, you know, the feedback's been great. I think some hesitations going in is, well, that's more work. or does that cost more money because I get 2 reports instead of 1, right? But I think ultimately, once we are given a chance to showcase this report, you know, in most cases, clients lean in with it being a supplement to a PowerPoint versus like, let's just go in and replace the PowerPoint. So as a supplement, that's sort of that safe space to trial and error this. And the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive. You know, it gives them something new to share. It gives them options. I think options are good, right? Like there might be some stakeholders that get all the deliverables. There might be some stakeholders that only get this new deliverable, but what we've been hearing from clients is it's a great way to make them look good just because they're bringing an innovative deliverable to the group. We also heard it's helping our clients reach new like eyeballs. Folks who I wouldn't say they don't care about insights, but if they're not charged with being an insights practitioner, maybe they just don't have time to view another PowerPoint report. Or they have best intentions of one day when I have free time, I'm going to scan through that latest, you know, those latest tracker results. And then, you know, 3 weeks pass and you realize I'm never going to look at that. I'm doing my day job. So our clients have told us this is a great way to like get to people on the periphery of insights. So they're stakeholders. Like, I know you don't have time. I know you're busy. I know this is my job to like synthesize insights and activate it. But if you have 3 minutes, check this out. And that's kind of been a way for folks to just get more eyeballs on the work, which I think is really like the best thing this is accomplishing. Like at the end of the day, when you invest in research and you do it, you would want as many people as possible in your organization to take a peek at it. learn from it, be inspired by it, maybe want to take action off of it. And this just gives our clients another tool in their kit, and we sort of leave it to them to activate as they see fit. But for some of those insight haters, or for some of those people who just seem to never have the time or attention span for a traditional research deliverable, this is a way to sort of break through with those folks and just get them to finally pay attention to what we did.
Right. Great. We'll open it up for audience Q&A here shortly. Just a final question for you from my end. What are some don'ts, or some common mistakes that people should avoid when creating
I guess first and foremost, when we design these, a lot of these take the guise of like, here's the top 3 things you need to know. That's a little bit of a play on the fact that we're Reach3. We like that number. We like to do things in 3s, right? Steve Jobs, the power of 3s. So if there are 4 really interesting insights from a study, we're going to do the top 4 things you need to know. At one point, I think we did a top 13 things you need to know. The client pushed pretty hard for that. That's to me getting a little excessive, and we're falling back into our old ways as researchers, right? Can I add 3 more questions? Can I add 1 more slide? So I would say one of the first things, first and foremost, is like, let's be really particular about what truly is like the news from this study. What is the insight? What did we learn that we didn't know that justified the spend? That's what I want to be in these reports. And then go shout it as loud as you can and spread the report as far as you can. Like I think what's also interesting about these deliverables is they are cool, for lack of a better word. So I think it gives our clients a little bit more confidence to share these out. They're less ashamed of, I know you don't have much time, but want to look at my bar chart 60-page deck. Like, it gives our clients confidence to maybe go to that atypical stakeholder, take the insights one level further to their C-suite, because they almost just want to show it off because it's cool, it's new, it's innovative. So I think in that spirit of being new and innovative, and it's meant to be succinct and punchy, we need to make sure we don't fall into our old traps of making them overwhelming and having too much content, which is, of course, what we researchers do best.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so moving on to audience Q&A here. Marianne has a great question. Marianne, I'm wondering if you'd like to go online and ask your question directly to Jon.
Sure. Hey, Jon, how are you?
Great. How you doing?
Good. I'm a big Reach3 fan of
thank you.
that, and I know Andrew from being up in Vancouver with him. So yeah, I'm a little biased here, but
okay.
I'm also been in research for more than 30 years. So I've seen the evolution of different ways of presenting, everything from that huge, 200-page deck down to the 1-page executive summary. So, I mean, I try to bring things to life as much as possible, especially really hearing directly from the consumer. So incorporating, snippets from, focus groups or one-on-ones or that kind of thing. And I try to make that more of the voice than my voice when I'm doing presentations. So how is this approach different than just incorporating those video snippets into a kind of more traditional PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, that's an incredible question. Like, to me, the key difference is when this is built right, it becomes a little bit more of like a digital story. Part of it's almost just think like the UX of a web page versus a PowerPoint. You are scrolling. So yeah, there's a finding with some quant data and maybe a video show reel. To your point, we could create that in PowerPoint. Headline, bar chart, video show reel, and at least you're bringing to life, quant data that we trust, plus, oh, wow, now I see and hear people kind of reinforcing what's in the bar chart. So I believe this, I empathize with this. But I think the idea that then you have to flip a slide, you almost reset. Okay, what am I learning on this slide? Headline, chart, maybe that one does or doesn't have video artifacts or photos. So the idea that, like, if you're on your phone, you're scrolling with your thumb. If you're on an iPad, you're scrolling with your finger. Even if you're on a web page, you're scrolling down with a mouse. So it sort of becomes this like digital story that builds, and it's a little bit more cohesive. So those 3 things, those top 5 learnings, it all comes together into maybe one big story versus like, I learned 3 things after flipping through this deck. So I think that's kind of the key difference is the UX and the way we sort of write it, but still back it up with data, becomes a little bit more seamless for someone to just digest it, is what I would say. Does that answer your question? Cool.
Yeah, the other thing I would just add is maybe portability. Like with this one, if you're sharing it with a client or your CEO for whatever reason, like you're literally just sharing a link, which loads in any browser. Whereas with if you're on your phone, I think it'll be a little bit more challenging to open a PowerPoint.
Yeah, and you didn't ask this, Marianne, but another common question is, well, how is this different from a dashboard? And same thing, like, all right, it's almost like we're like merging dashboards and PowerPoints. That's like almost what this sort of beautifully is like the best of both of those and without the shortcomings of both of those. Like to me, a dashboard is, all right, well, that's a little bit more user-friendly to engage with. Anyone can log in. It is a link that you probably can share out with stakeholders. You get to it though, and it just has a lot of content without the implications, without the so what, without the writing. I mean, I do think, what sometimes separates a good from a bad PowerPoint is how well written the story and the summary is. And I think that's certainly a big part of these as well. Like you have to be articulate. You have to be able to really explain your data well. And I think that's the other common question we get is more just, well, how is it different? Isn't this a dashboard? It's an online results portal. Isn't that a dashboard? But it's really not, right? Because again, curated digital story that's just trying to bring to the surface the most important things from a project instead of having everything from the study.
Yeah. Joe actually brought up an interesting point in the chat a while ago. So that kind of relates back to dashboards. It's a little bit different, but I just wanted to bring it up. So he said, getting our clients to go beyond PowerPoint is tough. Getting them to log on to a data visualization tools. So a data visualization tool where they can interact with data seems impossible. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's exactly what we've been talking about is, PowerPoint we're used to. Okay, well, here's a dashboard. I don't want to deal with that. Like I have to do it myself, right? And I think that's the difference is think of this about, in a way you could think about this as a dashboard with curated analysis implications and recommendations. So we're not putting it on that end stakeholder to manipulate data, do filters in their own subgroups, and then determine what does that even mean for my business? Like that's done by the research team. So it does the work for them is I guess what I would say. And I think it's why it's a little bit easier to embrace than the world of dashboarding.
Right. I want to be respectful of your time, John. So there's an anonymous question here regarding the privacy of these mobile deliverables. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we password protect all of them. So that's a great question. The one Kelvin shared is, again, a demo that doesn't need to be password protected, but we password protect all these deliverables so that if for some reason someone was able to find or determine the actual URL on their own, they'd be blocked from obviously seeing proprietary information from your study.
Cool. One question I have is regarding the future of deliverables. Like, obviously you guys are experimenting a lot with mobile deliverables. You guys do video reels. What other things are you experimenting with, or what other things are clients experimenting with?
Yeah, something that I think will be really intriguing in the future is something that is almost like, an app-based or takes this digital storytelling to the next level where you're actually bringing in results from all your projects. You could be bringing in, applicable news sources. And if you think about, say, being a researcher at Red Bull, whether you are in operations, you're in insights, you're in marketing, you're in the C-suite, like every day you could go to your branded app or article, and it's actually like your personal Wall Street Journal for your company, your brand. It's your personal Chicago Tribune. It's like your USA Today of anything and everything that should matter to you and your company. Some of that's pulled in from secondary sources. Some of it's just news articles being pulled in, as well as just a place that houses all your primary insights. And I know knowledge platforms exist, but I think this goes beyond just housing all our data and studies, and it brings in other complementary data sources and somehow package those up into sort of like a digestible news feed, or like, how could any employee not look at that, right? If I work for Red Bull, this is going to be the go-to source to know almost everything that's going on in our company and with our customers. So I think that's something that maybe we could aspire for many, many years from now. But I think that would be really, really cool to think about. What we're doing here is curating a singular report for clients in the form of a digital story. What if one day we're curating, an entire, news database for our clients that brings in primary, secondary, and third-party sources into one cohesive, like must-see, must-read place? That to me would be really, really cool, and something that hopefully we get to.
Yeah, and other things that I just heard from previously, things like podcasts and mini infographics. There's lots of room for creativity here, I think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that would, in my vision, that could be a part of that. You're scrolling through. Here's the latest 3 things from your concept test. Here's something that's going on in your, here's the big learnings from your latest tracking study. Oh, a colleague reported a podcast. Let me watch that for 3 minutes. Like, just think about this scrollable interface where it's a series of the stuff that matters from all the work you're doing across an organization.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, Jon, for your time. If people want to get in touch with you, do you have any, how can they do that?
Yeah, feel free to text me first and foremost, right? We're the mobile messaging based company. So 312-898-0579. Otherwise, just shoot me a LinkedIn message. It's the first tab I have open on my browser at all times. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. And then if you ever want to send me an email, just Jon, Jon, at reach3insights.com.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks again, Jon, and thanks everyone for joining us. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit something about mobile deliverables, and we'll see you next week when we chat with Cherry Leonard from Colgate-Palmolive about foresight.
Nice. Cool. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Really appreciate it. All right.
Sweet.
How'd it go?
Thanks, Jon.
Yeah, no worries.